Is it a struggle? Yes, we have to realize our strengths and our weaknesses. Hi, and welcome to YYNet with Janice, and I'm your host, Janice. Goal of our show is to help others to reach their goals. Today we have a spectacular show today. I have a Chicago favorite here, Bill Wildt from Motorsports Unlimited. And the topic of this show is, and we're actually going to do a two-parter with him, is the effects of broadcast on society. And why I brought him on the show is the effects on public access television, what we have, also affected him with Motorsports Unlimited, and also various sports are now not on television. And he's going to explain us the reason why and what we need to do with it. Please, welcome my guest, Bill. Welcome to the show.
Well, it's a pleasure to meet you, Janice.
Hey, great. Well, first, I want people to know who you are first. So
that would be a good start.
That's a good start. So we're going to show a little clip for a few minutes here.
This was a piece, very nice piece done by Channel 2 News I won't say how many years ago, because I like to think I look the same way. But go ahead and roll it.
Okay, we're going to roll this clip now.
There are few limits to what TV producers will try these days to get people to watch. But in Schaefer's place, Mark reports on a show done right here in Chicago that uses an old-fashioned gimmick to draw a crowd of viewers.
Yeah, you bring it over. Now, stools too close together for them.
At a cable TV studio downtown Chicago, they're getting ready to shoot a segment of Motorsports Unlimited, arguably the most watched cable TV show in Chicago.
Hi, I'm Subi Itzenbauer.
Appearing on 9 cable systems in the area.
I'm Denise, and welcome to
On most systems, it's seen 4 times a week, with such blockbuster topics as new advances in fuel injection technology and the advantages of a stroked crank 484 with steel lifters.
Hi, I'm Chris Schutz.
The reason this motorsports show is so popular is the star.
I'm Bill Wildt, and we want to welcome you to Motorsports Unlimited.
This cable TV show features muscle cars and mannequins, live ones, and they are what everyone's watching.
You're the guy that has that show with those girls with the feathers. They don't know his name or the name of the show, but they recognize the feathers.
That's right.
Instantly.
So it's kind of like you are the stars, in a way.
Sure.
Listen, this is a great car, but I'm going to tell you something. We're going to have to move. We're going to have to walk around behind the car, and I'll explain it as we go. Just go ahead and walk around there. See, I get angry letters from viewers if we block the girls. So
often interviews are done way in the back of the studio while the cameras get shots of the cars from interesting angles. And they sometimes stay on those shots for a long time.
Certainly do. It's campy, it's dated, it's unbelievable, and it's absolutely mesmerizing.
The hour-long show is a low-budget cable access production. Everyone's a volunteer. Bill, the star, helps in all phases of production. No detail escapes his attention. Or should that be, no important detail escapes his attention?
how can I get folks to watch our little public access show when they all have a remote control in their hand and they can go to Channel 2 like that? Nothing attracts attention like a pretty girl.
Motorsports Unlimited is a show that knows its audience.
Is it rolling? Okay. Girls, arch your backs, puff up, big warm smiles. Everybody look at camera 2, big smile.
Mark Schaefer, Channel 2 News.
Just as long as it's not on at 10 o'clock at night.
Yes, and I like to think I still look the same. We'll let the audience be the judge, but it was some time ago, and that should give people a little idea of what Motorsports Unlimited is all about. And by the way, I'm sure I'm not the only one that hopes I still look the same. I'll bet all the girls on that clip hope that they still look the same.
Yes, you look great on that.
Yeah.
No facial hair, though.
Pardon me?
You had facial hair on that clip.
Yes, and sadly, interesting enough, the person on the show who said she was Chris Schutz, that was my wife, and the only reason I ever had that, I hated it, the only reason I ever had that is because she wanted it. And she asked for so little. I said, if that makes her happy, to me it was a major pain. You know, I felt like a girl primping in the mirror. I said, this is not for me. She liked it, so I did it. The odd thing was when she passed away in 1996 of a brain aneurysm, a sudden passing. And when she passed away, I thought I would shave it off right away. It took me almost 2 years to shave it off. I just couldn't bring myself to do it, you know. It's odd how those things affect us. Anyhow, I'm sorry. Go ahead, whatever you wanted to ask me.
Well, that was great with your show, but I want to talk to you about how, like, we're on the public access show.
Right.
So how has broadcast in society, effect on society, has affected you in motorsports? How's it affected what we view on television?
Okay, first of all, in order to respond to your question, I think the audience needs to know what we're talking about when we say television.
Right.
We're not talking about the security system at the local McDonald's. We're not talking about the security system in Walmart. We're not talking about the Ring video, home video things. What we're talking about is network television and the influence it has on society. And in order to understand public access television, you have to really understand the history of broadcast from whence it came. Television began after World War I. I'm going to say about 1917, when the doughboys were coming back from Europe and they had this marvelous new technology called radio. And those who were technically gifted put together crystal sets, and they were fooling around with trying to hear things, and others were trying to broadcast, et cetera, et cetera. What they soon became aware of was, with everybody on the air, nobody could be heard. I don't know if you remember the CB radio craze, if you remember.
Yes,
okay. Well, the problem with CB radios is everybody walks on everybody else, and they limited that by limiting the amount of power a CB transmitter could have. So we weren't stepping on each other across the country.
Right.
But in the early 1920s, we didn't have any of that. So everybody was walking on everyone else. So a huge discussion began. If America was ever going to benefit from this wonderful new technology called radio, we were going to have to somehow control it, because with everybody on the air, nobody could be heard. Secondly, Europe was already developing an elaborate broadcast system, because Europe wasn't hobbled by this pesky thing called a constitution. And we have a constitution in this country that guarantees every one of us free speech and free press.
Correct.
In order to make this work, we're going to have to deny nearly the entire population the right to access this medium.
Oh, that's not fair.
That's not fair at all.
Right.
That's a terrible idea. Well, this was, if you read the congressional record, as I have, from 1925, 1926, this was a raging argument. Those that said we have to control it or we'll never benefit from radio, and those that said, no, we can't deny people access to it. That's not right in a country that guarantees everybody free speech and free press.
Right.
Finally, by 1927, it didn't matter which side of the argument it came down to. It was clear we were not going to have radio if the government didn't get involved with the thing and limit who could do it.
Right.
What they decided to do, and this was done with the Radio Act of 1927, and by the way, don't ever take my word for anything. This is all, you can look this up, it's very easy. The Radio Act of 1927. And what this essentially said is, we are going to grant the privilege of broadcasting to a privileged few and deny the rest of the population the opportunity to be heard. With the following caveat, and they use the term, serve the public interest. That those being given the right to broadcast do not own the public airwaves.
Right.
They belong to all of us. And the fact that they've been given the privilege of broadcasting doesn't give them ownership.
Right.
This has been to the Supreme Court at least 3 times, most recently Red Lion Broadcasting, 1969. And in every occasion, the Supreme Court has ruled these are the public airwaves and they belong to everyone. They don't belong to those licensees.
Right. It's public.
Because it became more and more obvious. Franklin Roosevelt, President Roosevelt, was one of the first to recognize how interesting how it compares favorably today. He saw it as a wonderful way to go around the press. He would do his fireside chats, and he didn't have to read his words interpreted through some journalist. He could talk to the public, and he was one of the first to recognize how important this was. And it was becoming increasingly important. Now I'm talking about...
And people would tune in for the fireside chats,
yeah,
right?
and we're talking about radio, because remember, television didn't exist at this time.
Right.
But all of the broadcast laws that applied to radio applied to television. Now, naturally, many people sued. Many people were very angry about not being able to, when they started to see the power that television was having, and so they sued. In every occasion, the Supreme Court ruled, these are the public airways. The FCC was supposed to control this and see to it that the broadcasters did, in fact, serve the public interest.
Right, okay.
Here's the problem.
But they didn't.
You got 250 million people and 3 channels.
Right. The big 3, ABC,
How do you divvy
CBS,
that
and
up?
NBC. Right.
How do you divvy it up?
Yeah.
It's a
across
nearly...
the big nation.
So finally, when cable television came along, and it didn't come along for that purpose, it came along because in some areas they had mountains and they couldn't get reception and all that. But the FCC had it right up to here, with these lawsuits and the people demanding to be able to be heard, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And of course, those who already had a stranglehold on television, they weren't about to give it up. They had real power. And the FCC says, we're tired of all this. If you want to be a cable operator, here's part of what you have to do. Number one, you have to make a channel available for the public to use for free. Number two, you have to provide them with video equipment to use for free. Number three, you have to teach them how to use the video equipment for free. And number four, you have to air whatever they produce for free. Now, there was a caveat, and the caveat was you couldn't use it for commercial purposes. You couldn't go on and do infomercials and things like that. It's a free speech platform. It's an opportunity for the public to be heard. That's why we have public access television. Now, why is this important, and why am I doing a public access show? In my lifetime, I've spent my entire life racing. My first racetrack, well, I shouldn't say that. My first one was Oswego Dragway, but that was drag racing. And my second one was O'Hare Stadium. You probably didn't even know that.
I did not know about that one.
O'Hare Stadium was on Mannheim Road, just a little bit south of O'Hare Airport. Mannheim Road was, or Irving Park Road was in a little different location at the time, but it's still just south of Irving Park Road on Mannheim Road.
Actually,
and
yes, I do remember that from ages ago.
Yeah, that's O'Hare Stadium.
Yeah.
It's gone.
Right.
I spent years racing at Santa Fe Speedway. Santa Fe Speedway in Willow Springs, Illinois. Although it's not really Willow Springs, it's interesting. Howard Teat owned the place, and the Teat family was so big and went back so long. The Santa Fe Speedway dates back to the 1800s, and it was originally called Teatville, and they had their own post office box, or their own zip. I'm sorry, post office zip code. Their own zip code. It was Teatville. Anyhow, it later was incorporated into Willow Springs and all that. It's gone.
Gone.
Raceway Park. I spent many wonderful times down at Raceway Park.
Calumet City, Blue Island. Yeah. I remember that as a kid.
Gone. Gone. We just lost Ileana, 2016. Gone. Well, now, why do you suppose these places are gone?
Well, I assume, like, from your show, it has to do with television, because television has that big influence.
It has to do with the failure to generate enough revenue to fund themselves and flourish. Now, how do motorsport facilities generate revenue?
Well, you generate revenue by selling tickets, but...
bingo. Selling tickets.
Right.
Okay. So you would be fair to say that they are a competitor in the sports entertainment marketplace, correct? Now, who else is in the sports entertainment marketplace?
Well, we have the wrestlers, we have the Bears, the Cubs, the White Sox, the Bulls.
Okay. Now we have, for the past 70 years, the broadcast industry has had something called news shows. They're not news, but they call them news shows. And they call themselves journalists and all that, but whatever. But in any event, so 4 times a day, 7 days a week, they say what's going on in sports. And they tell you about the Cubs and the Bears and the White Sox et al. Cubs and the Bears and the White Sox, Cubs and the Bears and the White Sox. And in the same geographic location, we have O'Hare Stadium, Raceway Park, Santa Fe Speedway, never, ever included.
Right.
How do you suppose we can possibly sell tickets if the public doesn't even know we're around?
Right.
Now, I had to prove this to myself. I was aware of what was going on. I was racing at Santa Fe Speedway at the time, racing motorcycles. And I told my wife, I says, you know, get dressed up and get a clipboard. And we're going to, at that time, it was brand new. The big indoor mall out in Schaumburg, Woodfield.
Woodfield.
The big Woodfield Mall. We're
Right.
going to get, they had just opened. We're going to go out there and I'm going to do a survey.
Okay.
And I asked 104 people the following 4 questions. I preceded the questions by saying, I'm not asking you if you like these things, if you enjoy these. I'm not asking if you've ever gone to these things or if you're interested in these things. I'm only asking if you are aware of them. Do you know they exist? First question was, do you know about the Chicago Cubs and Wrigley Field?
Most people would probably say yes.
Second question, do you know about Comiskey Park and the Chicago White Sox?
Most people say yes.
Third question was, do you know about the Chicago Bears and Soldier Field?
Absolutely.
Do you know there is a motorsport facility in the Chicago area that has hosted professional motorcycle racing every Wednesday night for 50 consecutive years?
Absolutely not.
Not one person in 104, and yet Woodfield, I selected that location because it's the center of the geography of the Wrigley Field, Comiskey Park, Santa Fe Speedway.
Oh, okay.
We're direct competitors in the sports entertainment marketplace, and yet The people
No one knew.
didn't even know. How are you going to sell tickets to something people don't even know exists?
Right.
And yet our competitors for public attention, the Cubs and the Bears and the White Sox, and make no mistake about it, Chicago Cubs don't belong to the people of Chicago or to the city of Chicago. They're
No,
a
it's private owner.
business, in
Right, it's
business to
private
make a
ownership.
profit. The White Sox don't belong to the people of Chicago or the city of Chicago. They're
Right.
a private business. They're no different than Walmart. The Bears, as much as I love the Bears don't belong to the people of Chicago or the city of Chicago. They're a
Right.
private business and business. So what gives the broadcast industry the right to advance the commercial interests of some of the competitors in the sports entertainment
Right.
marketplace at the expense of the others?
Correct.
And this has literally killed us for the past 70 years. I'm old enough to remember before television. I remember when they could
But that's
legitimately...
like giving free publicity
It's,
to this
it's
private
not like
company.
it is free
It
publicity.
is.
It's not
It
like
is.
it's free publicity.
It's free
How on
publicity.
earth is that news? It's not
That
news.
isn't news.
It's not news at all. It's like reporting that a cashier at Walmart has a sore elbow and isn't going to be at work this week, so don't look for your favorite
Right.
cashier there. That's not news.
Right. It's just feeding probably the big corporation that might actually own the
Yeah.
channels and the
Let me-
licenses.
Let me go further.
Please do.
Would it be possible that the people that hold the reins of network television have financial interests in the Cubs and the Bears and the White Sox?
They have to.
I don't know, and that's one of the things that I wanted to find out. I wanted to use Motorsports Unlimited to generate enough revenue. I literally wanted to take the networks and the FCC to the Supreme Court and have them explain it to me. We in the motorsport community are not the only victims of this. I'll give you another example, and I don't speak for them, and I shouldn't because I don't know anything about it. I don't. They have a different financial model. Horse racing.
Right.
The sport of kings, 20 years ago, Chicago area, the Chicago metropolitan area, had more horse racing facilities than any other place in the country.
Yeah.
Today we're down to 2, and I think we're going to lose one of those.
Right.
The sport of kings, is that ever mentioned on the sports news?
No,
The
but
sport
it
of
used
kings,
to be.
the sport of kings.
Right. It used to be, though.
So what I'm saying to you is that motorsport isn't the only victim of
Right.
this. And I insist on a fair share for the motorsport community because, quite frankly, we can't exist without it, and neither can anyone else.
Right. We can't.
Yeah.
No, but it's horrible that the corporations and these private industries are taking over something that should be for the public and for the public interest.
Yeah.
The free
isn't it?
publicity.
Well, it's even worse than that. They literally are dictating the public's interest.
They're dictating what
they're
goes
dictating
on.
what is sports.
Right.
Your notion of sports, and people have often asked me, well, why do you suppose that happened, Bill? Why do you suppose? Well, I don't have to suppose. I'm old enough to remember I saw it happen. I don't have to suppose at all. I know exactly what happened. In the very early days of television, equipment was cumbersome, heavy, big, and difficult to maneuver. And when they decided we're going to do a news show, and part of that's going to be sports, and I'm being generous, by the way, to the broadcast industry, it's difficult to move the equipment around. We're going to include sports. What do you mean sports? Well, you know, baseball, football,
Right.
college sports. Well, wait a minute. Most people don't go to college. Just
Right.
because these guys that are put together in this corporation is going to have this broadcasting interest, just because they went to college and their perception of sports, well, we've got an entire other half of the country didn't go to college, and we have our own perception of what sports
Right.
is, and the airways belong to all of us.
Correct.
Why are we excluded? Why are we literally starved to death? While those other ones, I don't have to tell you, baseball, football, and basketball, I don't have to tell you, these people were wealthy beyond imagination.
Absolutely.
All because of the promotion of television sports news. And I want it for my community before we're completely gone. All of the racetracks that I raced at as a young man are all gone. I think it's pretty sad.
I think the Joliet Speedway is still open. Is that about the only one around, I think?
No, well, Joliet is still there. It's not a weekly program.
Right. It's just there for the big NASCAR come in, and that's the
No,
only way.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're talking about a different one. I was thinking about the little Joliet short track. No, you're talking about the Chicagoland Speedway.
Right.
Yeah, that's really not close enough for me to really call it a Chicago area track. I'm kind of talking about the tracks that are a little closer to Chicago. But even that, the only reason the Chicagoland Speedway exists is for the NASCAR race.
Right, that's it.
The NASCAR
And
race
that-
carries the thing for the whole year.
Right.
It provides enough revenue for the whole thing. And and I congratulate NASCAR on what they've accomplished. They've accomplished something that I didn't think was really accomplishable, in that they had average people with run-of-the-mill normal cars, little stickers on them with the number 3 on it for Earnhardt. And they actually had the general public, not just gearheads, interested in what they were doing. So they really did a good job with that, and I applaud them for it. I'm happy for their success, and I'm holding my fingers. I keep my fingers crossed that their success continues. Because if we lose NASCAR, I just did a program about this. I called NASCAR the Titanic, and I hope it's not. And what I mean by that is that, you know, it's the largest, richest motorsport organization, and I hope they're not paying attention at the highest level, because they're the people who have the resources to do something about this. Because I don't know how to tell you this, guys, at the upper levels, there's already people dead at the bottom. The ship is sinking. The ship is sinking because where they get their fans from, they don't just get their drivers from the local short tracks. That's where they get the next generation of fans too. That's where people learn about motorsport and learn to appreciate it and all that. You lose these local tracks.
Little tracks you go to, you pay a little bit of money to at least go see. You bring your
once
kids,
or twice a year, you go to a big event. Yes, exactly. And that's what my concern. I have a lot of reasons to be concerned about this. It's not just the fact that I want to keep these guys in business, although I do, because that's the only way anything survives in America. We're a capitalist society. If these guys don't make money, they go out of business, and the proof's in the pudding. One of the reasons I started Motorsports Unlimited is because I came upon information that in 1953, there were more than 2,500 racetracks in this country. And by the beginning of the 60s, there were fewer than 800. It doesn't take a genius to figure out that we're at risk. And looking at it, I saw what was happening. We were not included in television. It was becoming pretty clear to me, if you didn't have a presence on television, you didn't exist in America. And that's what's happened to us. And I'm standing here waving a red flag saying, this isn't right. We ought to have a fair share. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to take over your program.
It's okay. No, but you have very valid points. But basically, if it's not funded by television, the big corporations, everything's dying out. I mean, I don't know if they count this as sports, but I remember the roller derby.
Well, of
used
course
to be
it's
on
sports.
TV.
Of course
Wrestling.
it's sports. Yes.
Yeah, those used to be on TV, and they're not anymore. I like that.
I can tell you that I'm originally from upstate New York. And when I was very young, we didn't have television. And when my father got a television, and he was taking and arranging curtain rods into an antenna, trying to get reception in upstate New York. One of the first things that we saw, and I'm talking about 1952-ish, something like that, first thing we saw was professional wrestling from Marigold Gardens in Chicago. Do you remember that, or you're probably not old enough to remember that?
No, but I remember like Dick Brutus, I think his name is Buckets.
No, you're talking about
the Crusher and all those.
Yeah, Dick the Bruiser, the Crusher. I'm talking about earlier guys like Lou Thez and Yukon Eric and Hans Schmidt. These are these are early
TV
50s,
anymore,
right? And it's also crushing to them. And the question is, what gives broadcast the right to determine what sports is and dictate what sports is? Problem is, this isn't funny because they're hurting people. For example, let's just use Santa Fe Speedway as an example. I raced motorcycles there from 1970 to 1975 every Wednesday night. And we always had roughly 150 riders there, 150 competitors. Well, that means that was 150 families connected to those riders. That's a lot of people. I'm not even talking about the fans in the stands. I'm talking about the people that participated.
I have family members that actually raced also on the motorcycles.
And these people were struggling. They, including me. I really wanted a professional career racing motorcycles. I really did. And the problem was, I look back at it so ridiculous now, but I was younger then. Had a good night at Santa Fe, qualified well, forget exactly, and went to the pay window and got $16 at the pay. No, you can't. But you can't complain about it when you look in the stands and you see there's only a couple, 3,000 people in the stands. If you can't put 40 or 50,000 people in the stands, you can't pay these riders anything. I mean, it's simple mathematics. It's not hard to figure out. So in order for our sport to fund itself and flourish, it has to attract audience. And we can't attract audience without a presence on television. So we circled back around to the thing of who gets to use the public airwaves and for what purpose? It's a question we all ought to ask. I'm just talking about motorsport because it's what I'm intimately familiar with.
Right.
It's what I've lived. However, but I can tell you this, television decides who our national leaders are. Right now, as we tape this, we're talking about beginning of August 2019, and television is deciding who the candidates will be for the next presidential election.
2020, they're already starting about that.
Who elected them?
Right.
Who elected them to decide who the candidates are going to be?
Right, and a lot of those people are actually, if they have friends who are broadcasters or news reporters or someone that they're connected with, they're getting more light on television, more time, and beefing them up, and they may not even be the right candidate.
Television has a greenhouse effect. And I quite honestly, I want that for my community. Television has a greenhouse effect. Whatever it focuses its attention on becomes bigger than life.
Bigger than
and it has that kind of power. It has absolutely enormous power. It influences everything we do and everything we think. And I'm dead serious about it. For example, I like to use the example of for those who remember, the Mary Tyler Moore Show.
Right.
It was I thought it was quite profound. It was quite a well done show. The interesting thing about it was Ted Baxter. Do you remember the Ted Baxter character? He was dumber than a box of rocks. People always wrote his copy for him, which he read poorly. But so why was Ted Baxter the on-the-air personality of this so-called news station? Because he looked right and sounded right. And we've been conditioned to look for people that look right and sound right. Maybe incompetent boobs, but they look right and sound right. We would not vote for a person, for president, who looks like Danny DeVito.
Correct.
Am I correct?
Correct.
And yet he may be the most talented person on the planet.
Correct.
Why do we think that way? Where do we get that perception from?
Just
television.
Television.
Television. I'll give you another example, if you don't mind. Again, I don't want to take over your...
Oh, I know we have a few minutes, but go ahead.
Another example. When was the last time you saw a flattering portrayal of a union or a union official on television? A flattering portrayal. I'm not talking about a news story. I'm talking about situation, comedy, drama, anything. When was
I can't say
your
I
perception
have,
from television is they're gangsters and crooks, right?
Right.
Okay. And yet, unions are the reason we have a 40-hour work week instead of a 60-hour work week. Unions are the reason we get time and a half for overtime. Unions are the reason we get health care.
All benefits.
So how have we allowed television to influence us to the point of having a negative view of unions, to the point where we're down to something like only 13% of the country is unionized, where at one time it was 70% of the country. We've literally lost the middle class. Television's had enormous, it's not just the motorsport community that's being hurt.
Right.
It's all of our society. We have given way too much power to a privileged few.
Absolutely. Well, I know we only have a few, well, actually I have less than a minute on the show.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do
I
this
want
to you.
you for a second show, so we're
fine.
going to wrap this show up, and then we're going to still talk some more in a moment,
Happy to do it.
Okay, great. Well, this is Janice with Why and Why Not. We're talking with Bill Wildt from Motorsports Unlimited, and talking about broadcasting and the effects on society. What we're going to do is we're going to take a break, and this will be a second part that we're going to go on to for the following week. Okay? Check us out on YouTube. We're also on Comcast Wednesday night at 6:30, Channel 19, Facebook. Thank you very much, and don't forget, tune in for the second show with Bill. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.